The day Velnira Sorrenthi married the human was the day her people stopped respecting her. She stood in the great hall of the Volanthi hegemony, her silver skin glowing under the ceremonial lights, and she watched the small creature walk toward her. He was shorter than her by 2 heads. His skin was a strange pinkish brown, soft and unmarked by battle scars. His eyes were a simple brown color, nothing like the burning gold of her people. His name was Marcus Cole, and he was a diplomat from Earth. The elders had arranged this marriage to seal an alliance between humans and the Volanthi. Her people were warriors who had conquered 12 star systems. Humans were newcomers to the galaxy, a young species that had only discovered faster-than-light travel 200 years ago. Many Volanthi saw them as children playing at being a real civilization. Velnira was an ambassador, a woman of duty. When her government told her to marry this human, she did not argue. She stood tall and proud as the ceremony completed, and she became the wife of Marcus Cole. The wedding feast was quiet. Her friends and family barely spoke to the human. They looked at him like he was a strange pet she had brought home. Marcus did not seem to mind. He sat beside her and ate small portions of food and smiled politely at everyone. "Your people do not like me very much," he said to her in a soft voice. "They do not know you," Velnira replied. "Will they ever want to know me?" he asked. She did not answer because she did not know what to say. The first months of their marriage were strange. They lived together on a space station at the border between human and Volanthi territory. They had separate bedrooms. They ate meals together but spoke very little. Velnira spent her days working on diplomatic matters while Marcus did whatever humans did. She learned small things about him during this time. He woke up every morning before the artificial sun turned on. She would hear him moving around in the darkness, and when she checked on him once, she found him exercising. He did push-ups and pull-ups and other movements that made his body shake with effort. For a human, he seemed strong, but to her warrior eyes, he was still just a soft little creature. He liked to read. He had a collection of old Earth books stored on a tablet, and he would sit for hours reading words written by dead humans. He told her once that his favorite was poetry. She did not understand why anyone would waste time on such things. He also liked to garden. He had set up a small area in their quarters with soil and lights, and he grew plants there. She watched him care for these plants with gentle hands. He would touch the leaves softly and water them carefully and smile when new growth appeared. It was such a peaceful and boring hobby. One evening, she saw something that confused her. Marcus was changing his clothes when she walked in without warning. For just a moment, she saw his bare arms and chest. His body was covered in scars. Long, thin lines crossed his skin like a map of old pain. Burn marks dotted his shoulders. A thick rope of scar tissue ran down his ribs. "What happened to you?" she asked. He quickly pulled on his shirt and gave her that same soft smile. "Old accidents," he said. "Clumsy moments from my younger days." She did not believe him, but she did not push. What did it matter? He was just a human. Another time, she found him in their storage room. He was holding something wrapped in dark cloth. When she came closer, she saw it was a blade. It was short and thin, with a handle made of some black material. The metal caught the light in a strange way, almost like it was drinking the brightness. "What is that?" she asked. "A family thing," he said. "It belonged to my grandfather. He carried it during a war long ago. I keep it to remember him." "You humans are sentimental," she said. "Yes," he agreed. "We are." He wrapped the blade back in its cloth and put it away. She forgot about it almost immediately. The weeks turned into months. Velnira grew used to her strange husband. He never raised his voice. He never argued with her. He never demanded anything. When they attended diplomatic events together, he stood quietly at her side and let her do all the talking. He seemed happy to be invisible. Her people continued to mock her behind her back. They called her the human's keeper. They said she had married a pet instead of a partner. They laughed about how the great Velnira Sorrenti had lowered herself to bond with such a weak creature. She tried to defend him sometimes. "He is kind," she would say. "He is gentle." "Kindness is weakness," her cousin told her. "Gentleness is for prey, not predators. You have married a creature that any Valanthi child could defeat in combat. What honor is there in that?" Velnira had no answer. She began to see her husband through her people's eyes. When she watched him tend his garden, she saw weakness. When she watched him read his poetry, she saw a waste of potential. When she heard his soft voice and saw his easy smile, she saw a man who had never known real struggle. But sometimes, late at night, she would catch him staring at nothing. His eyes would go distant and cold, like he was looking at something far away. In those moments, his face would change. The softness would disappear, and something else would take its place. Something hard and sharp and old. Then he would notice her watching, and the warmth would return to his eyes. He would smile and ask if she needed anything, and he would go back to being the quiet, gentle human she thought she knew. She told herself it was nothing. She told herself she was imagining things. Humans were just humans, after all. They were soft. They were weak. They were unremarkable. Her quiet husband was no different. That was what she believed. That was the lie she told herself every night before she fell asleep. And that was the lie that would soon shatter into 1,000 pieces. The threats began 6 months after the wedding. At first they were small things. Messages sent to Velnira's personal communication device. Words filled with anger and hate. They called her a traitor. They called her a disgrace to her bloodline. They said she had polluted the purity of the Valanthi people by bonding with a human. She deleted the messages and told no one. The group called themselves the Bloodsworn. They were warriors who believed the old ways were the only ways. They thought aliens were inferior. They especially hated the alliance with humanity. To them, making peace with such a weak species was the greatest shame imaginable. Their leader was War Commander Torvax, a massive Valanthi with pale silver skin covered in ritual scars. He had killed over 100 enemies in personal combat. He was considered the greatest duelist alive. His followers worshipped him like a god. The threats grew worse as the weeks passed. Pictures appeared showing Velnira's face crossed out with red marks. Her family received warnings to disown her. Other diplomats who supported the human alliance found their homes vandalized. Marcus noticed that something was wrong. "You seem troubled," he said one evening as they ate dinner. "Is there anything I can do to help?" "It is nothing," Velnira told him. "Political disagreements. They happen all the time." "If you are in danger, I would like to know," he said. She almost laughed. What would this soft little human do if she was in danger? Would he read poetry at her enemies? Would he throw flowers at them from his garden? "I can handle my own problems," she said. "Do not worry." He looked at her for a long moment with those simple brown eyes. Then he nodded and went back to eating. The Bloodsworn made their first real move during a diplomatic summit. Leaders from both species had gathered on a neutral station to discuss trade agreements. Velnira was there as a representative, and Marcus came with her as her husband. The evening banquet was crowded with important people. Velnira moved through the room, speaking with allies and rivals alike. Marcus stayed in a corner, quiet and unnoticed, holding a glass of water. Halfway through the evening, Velnira accepted a drink from a server. She raised it to her lips, but before she could taste it, a hand grabbed her wrist. It was Marcus. "Do not drink that," he said. His voice was different. It was still quiet, but there was something underneath the quietness, something cold and certain. "What are you talking about?" she demanded. He took the glass from her hand and held it up to the light. Then he dipped his finger into the liquid and touched it to his tongue. His face went hard. "Poison," he said. A neural toxin. It would have stopped your heart in 3 minutes. The room erupted in chaos. Guards rushed forward. Diplomats shouted questions. The server who had given Velnira the drink tried to run, but he was caught within seconds. Later, they learned that the server was a member of the Blood Sworn. He had been paid to kill Velnira and destroy the Alliance. "How did you know?" Velnira asked Marcus when they were alone in their quarters. "The color was wrong," he said. "Just slightly. And the server was sweating even though the room was cool. Little signs." "You saved my life," she said. He shrugged like it was nothing important. "I was paying attention, that is all." That night she could not sleep. She lay in her bed and thought about what had happened. Her husband had seen danger that she had missed. His eyes had caught details that trained Valanthi guards had overlooked. How was that possible? The assassination attempt made everything worse. The Bloodsworn saw that they had failed, and they became more desperate, more violent. They bombed a human cargo ship. They attacked a Valanthi official who supported the Alliance. They spread lies and fear everywhere they could. Velnira's own family began to distance themselves from her. "The Bloodsworn are too powerful," her mother told her. "Perhaps you should end this marriage and come home." "I will not run from terrorists," Velnira said. "Then you may die," her mother replied. The stress was eating Velnira alive. She slept poorly. She ate less. She found herself jumping at shadows and fearing every stranger. Marcus watched all of this with his quiet eyes. He asked her every day if she was safe. He offered to help in any way he could. She always refused, always pushed him away. "This is not your fight," she told him. "This is Valanthi business." "You are my wife," he said. "Your business is my business." "You do not understand," she shouted. "These are warriors, killers. You cannot help with soft words and kind smiles. You cannot protect me by being gentle." He did not argue. He never argued. He just nodded and walked away. That night she woke up in the darkness. She heard a sound from the main room of their quarters. Moving silently, she crept to the doorway and looked through. Marcus was sitting in the dark. The wrapped blade from his grandfather lay across his knees. He had unwrapped it, and the metal gleamed in the faint starlight coming through the window. His face was not soft anymore. His eyes were not warm. He looked like a completely different person. He looked like something ancient and dangerous and cold. "Who did this to you?" he asked the darkness. "Who tried to kill my wife?" His voice was barely a whisper, but it made Velnira's blood turn to ice. She had heard Valanthi warriors speak before battle. She had heard the voices of killers preparing for violence, but she had never heard anything like the sound that came from her husband's throat. It was not anger. It was not rage. It was something far more terrifying. It was patience. It was certainty. It was the voice of someone who had made a decision and would not be stopped. Velnira stepped back into the shadows. Her heart was pounding. Her hands were shaking. Who had she married? What had she brought into her home? She did not sleep for the rest of the night. And when morning came, Marcus smiled at her over breakfast and asked if she had slept well. His eyes were warm again. His voice was soft. He was the same gentle human she had always known. But now she could see the cracks in the mask. Now she could see that something else lived behind those simple brown eyes, and she was afraid. Velnira needed answers. For the first time since her marriage, she truly wanted to know who Marcus Cole was. Not the gentle gardener, not the poetry reader, not the soft-spoken diplomat who smiled too easily. She wanted to know what hid behind the mask. She used her access as an ambassador to search through human records. Most information about human citizens was protected, but diplomatic files were available to her. She expected to find nothing interesting. She expected to confirm that Marcus was exactly what he appeared to be. What she found instead destroyed everything she thought she knew. The first file she opened made her stop breathing. It was a military record, classified at the highest level. She should not have been able to see it. but someone had made an error somewhere, or perhaps the humans wanted her to find it. Either way, the truth was now staring at her from her screen. Marcus Cole had not always been a diplomat. Before his quiet life of gardens and poetry, he had been something else entirely. He had been a reclaimer. Velnira did not know that word, so she searched for more information. What she found made her blood run cold. 200 years ago, humanity had discovered faster-than-light travel. They thought they were ready to join the galaxy. They were wrong. A species called the Korvax found them first. The Korvax were conquerors. They saw humanity as a useful resource. They invaded Earth's colonies and enslaved millions of humans. They forced men and women and children to work in their mines and factories. They treated humans like animals. For 40 years, humanity suffered under Korvax rule. Earth itself was never conquered, but its children among the stars were prisoners. The Korvax laughed at human attempts to fight back. They called humanity weak. They called them prey. But humans did not give up. They created the Reclaimers. The Reclaimers were not soldiers. They were ghosts. They were trained from childhood to be the perfect weapons. They learned how to kill in 100 different ways. They learned how to move without being seen. They learned how to become invisible, to strike from shadows, to destroy their enemies from within. The Korvax had warships and armies. The Reclaimers had patience and skill and absolute dedication. One by one, the Reclaimers began to take back what was stolen. They slipped onto Korvax stations and killed commanders in their sleep. They freed slaves and destroyed supply lines. They turned the Korvax's own weapons against them. They were so effective that the Korvax started calling them demons. The war lasted 20 years. By the end, the Korvax Empire was broken. Not by human fleets, which were small and weak, not by human armies, which were poorly equipped. The Korvax fell because the Reclaimers made them afraid. When the war ended, the Reclaimers were disbanded. They were too dangerous to exist in peacetime. They knew too much, could do too much. So they were given new names and new lives and told to disappear. Most of them were happy to go. They had seen too much death. They wanted peace. Marcus Cole was one of them. His file contained details that made Velnira feel sick. During the war, he had killed 17 Korvax warlords. He had assassinated governors and generals and admirals. He had freed 2 entire colony worlds by himself. Not with armies, not with weapons of mass destruction, with just his skills and his blade. The blade. Velnira searched for information about the weapon Marcus kept in their quarters. She found a file about something called Whisper. Whisper was the name given to the weapons carried by the highest-ranked Reclaimers. They were short swords with edges only 1 molecule thick. They could cut through almost anything. Only 12 of these blades had ever been made, and only the deadliest Reclaimers were allowed to carry them. There was a tradition among Whisper carriers. Once the blade was drawn, it could not be put away until it had tasted blood. Every single time. Marcus had one of these blades. Marcus was one of these people. Velnira sat back from her screen and tried to understand what she had learned. Her hands were trembling. Her mind was spinning. She had called him weak. She had thought he was soft. She had looked at him with pity, like he was a harmless pet. All this time, she had been living with one of the deadliest beings in the galaxy. She thought about all the small signs she had missed. The scars on his body were not from accidents. They were from battles. The way he woke before dawn to exercise was not a simple habit. It was training. His quiet nature was not weakness. It was control. Even his garden made sense now. He had spent years dealing death. Now he wanted to create life. He wanted to prove to himself that he could do something besides killing. Velnira went back to their quarters in a daze. Marcus was in the kitchen preparing a simple meal. He looked up when she entered and gave her that familiar, warm smile. "Are you hungry?" he asked. "I made enough for both of us." She stared at him. She looked at his soft eyes and gentle hands. She looked at the man she had dismissed as unremarkable. "Who are you?" she whispered. His smile faded. He looked at her for a long moment, and she saw something flicker behind his eyes. Something old and tired and sad. "I am your husband," he said. "I am Marcus." "No," she said. "Who were you? Before?" He was silent. The kitchen seemed very small suddenly. The air felt thick. "You found the files," he said. It was not a question. "Yes." He nodded slowly. He set down the cooking utensils and wiped his hands clean. Then he turned to face her fully. "I was a monster," he said. "I was made into a weapon. I did things that still give me nightmares. I killed so many people that I lost count." His voice was calm, but his eyes were full of pain. "The war ended. I was given a choice. I could keep being that monster, or I could try to become something else. I chose to become something else. I chose peace. I chose gardening and poetry and a quiet life." "But the monster is still there," Velnira said. "I saw you last night, with the blade." Marcus did not deny it. "The monster will always be there," he said. "I keep it locked away. I keep it sleeping. But if someone threatens the people I care about, the monster will wake up." He stepped closer to her. His eyes were soft again, but now she could see the steel underneath. "I will never hurt you, Velnira. I will never be that monster with you. But if anyone tries to harm you, I will become everything they should have feared." She did not know what to say. She had married a quiet human. Now she understood that his quietness was the most dangerous thing about him. The Bloodsworn attacked during the Festival of Blades. It was the most sacred ceremony in Valanthi culture. Warriors gathered to honor their ancestors and prove their skill in ritual combat. The station was filled with important people, including Velnira and her human husband. No one expected an attack. The festival was supposed to be protected by ancient law. Even enemies respected this sacred time. But the Bloodsworn did not care about laws. The first sign of trouble was when the lights went out. The great ceremonial hall plunged into darkness. People screamed, guards shouted orders. Then the emergency lights came on, and Velnira saw that warriors in black armor had surrounded the hall. They were everywhere, at least 100 of them, maybe more. They held weapons and blocked every exit. At their front stood War Commander Torvax himself, his pale silver skin glowing in the red emergency lights. "No one moves!" Torvax shouted. His voice echoed through the hall. "Anyone who resists will die!" The Bloodsworn moved quickly. They grabbed hostages and disarmed guards. Within minutes, they controlled the entire hall. Hundreds of important Valanthi were now prisoners. Torvax walked through the crowd until he found Velnira. He grabbed her by the arm and dragged her to the center of the room. "Here is the traitor," he announced. "Here is the woman who polluted our bloodline by mating with a human." The crowd murmured. Some looked angry, some looked afraid. None dared to challenge Torvax. "Where is your pet?" Torvax demanded. He was looking around the room. "Where is the human?" Velnira's heart stopped. She looked for Marcus but could not see him anywhere. In the chaos of the attack, he had disappeared. "He ran away," one of the Bloodsworn soldiers laughed. "The little creature was afraid." Torvax smiled with cruel satisfaction. "Of course he ran. Humans are cowards. This is why the alliance is a mistake. This is why we must return to the old ways." He threw Velnira to the ground at his feet. "Tonight, we end this disgrace. We kill the traitor. We destroy the alliance, and we show the galaxy that the Valanthi bowed to no one." The crowd was silent. No one could help. The Bloodsworn were too many, too strong. Then the lights went out again. This time, they stayed out for 3 seconds. When they came back on, something had changed. One of the Bloodsworn soldiers near the back of the room was gone. His companions looked around in confusion. "Where is Krev?" one asked. No one knew. The lights flickered again. Another soldier vanished, then another. The Bloodsworn started to panic. They pointed their weapons at shadows and shouted at each other. Torvax roared for calm. "It is just a power failure. Stay focused." But it was not a power failure. A blood-sworn soldier screamed. The sound cut off suddenly, like someone had pressed a mute button. When the others turned to look, the soldier was lying on the ground. He was not moving. A thin line of violet blood was spreading across his throat. Now the fear was real. The blood-sworn bunched together, forming defensive circles. They watched the darkness with wide eyes. Something moved in the shadows. A shape, almost invisible, flowing from cover to cover. Soldiers fired their weapons at it, but they hit nothing. They were shooting at ghosts. One by one, the blood-sworn fell. There was no sound of combat, no clash of weapons, just silence, and then another body on the ground. The enemy they could not see was taking them apart like a machine. Velnira watched from the floor, her heart pounding. She knew who was doing this. She knew what had been unleashed. Finally, a figure stepped into the light. It was Marcus, but he did not look like the man she knew. His face was empty of all emotion. His body moved with a grace that did not seem human. In his hand, he held Whisper, the blade gleaming with fresh violet blood. He had killed at least 20 bloodsworn. He had done it alone. He had done it in minutes. The remaining bloodsworn backed away from him. They were elite warriors, trained since birth to fight, but they looked at this small human with pure terror in their eyes. Torvax pushed through his men. His face was twisted with rage. "What are you?" he demanded. Marcus looked at him with those cold, empty eyes. "I am her husband," he said. "You should not have touched her." "I am War Commander Torvax," Torvax shouted. "I have killed over 100 enemies in single combat. You are nothing, you are prey." He drew his ceremonial sword, a massive weapon designed for Valanthy strength. "I challenge you. Face me in combat, human. Let us see what you really are." Marcus did not answer. He just raised his blade. Torvax attacked first. He was fast for his size, incredibly fast. His sword swept through the air with enough force to cut a person in half. Marcus was not there. He moved like water, flowing around the attack. Whisper flicked out and left a thin cut on Torvax's arm. Torvax roared and attacked again. He unleashed a fury of blows, each one powerful enough to shatter stone. Marcus dodged them all. He did not seem to be trying hard. He moved with the same calm efficiency he used when tending his garden. Cut after cut appeared on Torvax's body. Arms, legs, chest, face. None of them were deep, but they were constant. The great war commander was being taken apart piece by piece. The fight lasted 11 seconds. On the 12th second, Marcus stopped moving. Torvax stood frozen in place. A thin red line appeared across his throat. Then the mighty war commander fell to his knees and collapsed. The hall was silent. No one moved. No one breathed. Marcus stood over his fallen enemy. He looked at the remaining bloodsworn with those terrible empty eyes. "Leave," he said. His voice was quiet, but everyone heard it. "Take your wounded and go. The next one who threatens my wife dies slower." The bloodsworn ran. They grabbed their injured and fled into the darkness. Within moments, they were gone. Marcus slowly wiped his blade clean. Then he sheathed it, and the cold emptiness faded from his eyes. The warmth returned. The softness came back. He walked to Velnira and helped her to her feet. "Are you hurt?" he asked gently. She shook her head. She could not speak. She could not find words. Around them, the crowd was staring. Warriors and nobles and leaders watched the small human with new eyes. They had seen something tonight that would change the way they thought about humanity forever. They had seen what happens when a quiet human unsheathes his blade. 3 days had passed since the Festival of Blades. The galaxy was talking about what happened. News reports showed footage of the aftermath. Commentators debated the meaning of a single human defeating dozens of elite Valanthy warriors. The word reclaimer appeared in headlines for the first time in 40 years. The bloodsworn were finished. With Torvax dead, The remaining members scattered. Many surrendered to authorities. Others fled to the edges of known space. The movement that had threatened the Alliance was now broken beyond repair. The Alliance itself grew stronger. Valanthe, who had doubted humanity, now looked at them with new respect. They had seen what a single human could do. They wondered what humanity might accomplish if truly threatened. Old jokes about humans being weak stopped being funny. Velnira was called a hero. Her marriage was no longer seen as a disgrace. Other Valanthe wanted to meet her husband, to shake the hand of the human who had killed Torvax. Politicians praised her wisdom in choosing such a powerful mate. But Velnira did not feel like a hero. She felt confused. She felt lost. She felt like she was married to a stranger. Marcus had not changed after the battle. He went back to his garden the very next morning. He read his poetry. He smiled his gentle smile. He acted like nothing had happened, like he had not just killed 20 people in the most sacred hall of her civilization. Velnira watched him and did not know what to think. On the third evening, she found him sitting in his garden. The artificial lights were dim, casting soft shadows over his plants. He was holding a small flower in his hands, looking at it with sad eyes. She sat down beside him. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. "How do you do it?" she finally asked. "Do what?" he replied. "How do you go from that to this?" She gestured at the garden around them. "How do you become a killer one moment and a gardener the next? How do you switch between those two people?" Marcus was quiet for a while. He turned the flower in his fingers, studying its petals. "They are not two people," he said at last. "They are the same person. I am all of it at once, the gentle parts and the violent parts. I do not switch between them. I just choose which one to let out." "Does it not haunt you?" Velnira asked. "The killing? The death?" "Every day," Marcus said. His voice was soft, but she could hear the weight in it. "Every single day. I remember all of them, every life I took. I see their faces when I close my eyes. I hear their voices in my dreams." He set the flower down carefully. "That is why I garden. That is why I read poetry. I spent so many years destroying things. I need to prove to myself that I can create things too. I need to know that I am more than just a weapon." Velnira felt tears forming in her eyes. She had never seen this side of him before. She had never understood the pain he carried. "Tell me about the war," she said. "Tell me what it was like." Marcus closed his eyes. "It was dark," he said. "Everything was dark. We lost so many people, Velnira, not just to the Korvax, but to what we had to become to fight them. We turned ourselves into monsters because that was the only way to save our species." He opened his eyes and looked at her. "There were children in the camps we freed, children who had been born as slaves, who had never known freedom. When we came for them, they did not know what we were. They had been taught that humans were worthless. It took years to undo that damage. I saved a little girl once. Her name was Maya. She was 7 years old, and she had never seen the sky. The Korvax kept her underground her whole life. When I carried her outside and she looked up and saw stars for the first time, she started crying. She did not know what they were." His voice cracked slightly. "I held her and told her they were lights, just lights in the sky. She asked if the Korvax put them there. I said no. I said they were there before the Korvax, and they would be there long after the Korvax were gone. She smiled at me then, the first real smile she had ever smiled." Marcus wiped his eyes. "That is what I fought for, not revenge, not anger. Just so children like Maya could see the stars. That is what I killed for." Velnira reached out and took his hand. His fingers were warm against her silver skin. "You never told me any of this," she said. "You never asked," he replied. "And I did not know how. How do you explain to someone that you were a monster? How do you ask them to love you when you are still afraid of yourself?" "I do not think you are a monster," Velnira said. "You saw what I did. Marcus said. "In the hall. You saw what I am capable of." "I saw a man protecting his wife," Velnira said. "I saw a warrior who had the power to kill but chose when to use it. That is not a monster. A monster kills without thinking. You think too much." Marcus laughed. It was a small laugh, tired and sad, but real. "My people have a saying," Velnira continued. "The fiercest storm hides in the stillest sky. I understand that now. Your quietness is not weakness. It never was. It is the calm before the storm. It is the mercy you show by keeping your power contained." She squeezed his hand. "I am proud to be your wife, Marcus Cole. I am proud of who you are, all of it. The gardener and the warrior, I do not want you to hide anymore, not from me." Marcus looked at her with wonder in his eyes. For a moment, he seemed unable to speak. "I thought you would hate me," he finally said. "I thought once you knew the truth, you would never look at me the same way." "I do look at you differently," Velnira admitted. "But not with hate, with respect, with admiration, and maybe, for the first time, with real love." She leaned forward and pressed her forehead against his, a Valanthe gesture of deep affection. "I married a quiet human," she whispered, "and I am so grateful that I did." Marcus smiled his gentle smile. But now she could see what lay beneath it. She could see the strength, the pain, the love, and the hope. She could see all of him, and she was not afraid. Outside their window, the stars shone in the darkness. The same stars that Maya had seen for the first time. The same stars that humanity had fought and bled to reach. And in a small garden on a space station between worlds, a warrior who had become a gardener held his wife's hand and finally felt at peace. The monster could sleep. It was not needed anymore. Not tonight.